So who's your favorite regent?
Okay, I may be a bit biased because it's Blanche of Castile, because shout out to Castile. But I love her. She was such a queen in many senses, including literally. She was like the queen of France, and the moment her husband died, her kid, Louis IX, he was like 12, and she was like, okay, we're gonna crown you immediately. Like, you're gonna be like king. Like, we're not gonna, let the rebels, have an opportunity. So she just got her son and was like, settle up a coronation for him, and also ask all the barons to swear fealty to him immediately. She was like, no, we don't want anything else. Like, just swear fealty to my kid. Like, we don't want any trouble. And then she formed an army like 3 times with the legate of with the papal legate and other nobles, just to protect herself. She was like, the moment she saw anything like going on weirdly, she was like, army up. And the main thing why I love her so much is because she saw Henry III trying to invade her, and she, trying to form alliances with French noblemen, and she just screwed him over repeatedly because he was like, "Oh, I want to marry this French noblewoman," and she was like, "Mm-mm." She went to the family and she was like, "Okay, you're gonna marry my son John," and then the second time Henry was like, "Okay, I'm gonna marry that French noblewoman," she was like, "Okay, Pope, don't you believe there is a consanguinity threat here, and this, marriage should be annulled?" So she was just constantly screwing over Henry III, very passionate, and I love that. I love that stuff.
I love it too.
Yeah. And she just basically stabilized the realm for her son. And when her son went on crusades, to the 7th crusade that no one cares about, she was still the regent because her son trusted her so much. He was like, "Oh yeah, you're in charge. You got this guy." Yeah. Do you have a favorite one?
I don't really have one favorite regent. I do like the ones in the Muslim areas at the start of our game, like Al-Mulk in the Fatimids, and Arwa over in Yemen, I believe. Mostly because it's an area where, in the popular conception, like, oh no, women didn't have any power in Muslim areas, but that's obviously not true. They had a lot of power, and especially as regents. Arwa, for example, she was so in power where she ruled that she was like the de facto ruler.
Oh, that's cool.
In CK2, I believe we even made her the ruler because it was such a... Like, the line was already completely blurred. Do you have a favorite regent?
Oh God, I have so many. So, I mean, I realized that I already shouted out Elspeth Przemyslid, who's like #1 queen. I've already shouted out Eleanor of Aquitaine. Huge up there. But I also really like Margaret I of Denmark. And the reason why I really kind of like her is that it was really unusual when she comes to rule in about, I think it's like 1387. It was incredibly unusual that a woman would be able to rule the Danish lands at all. There was absolutely no tradition of this. So her kind of being able to have the force to kind of take it over is really, really incredible. And she does like very smart kind of moves in terms of allowing that to happen. So she's got this particular way of talking about herself where she calls herself Margaret, by the grace of God, daughter of Valdemar, the King of Denmark, and Denmark's rightful heir. So she's got this really great way of talking about herself and kind of like doing the propaganda, which I think is really, really fun. But then also, just to go way east with it, I also really like the Empress Genmai in Japan. Because she does cool stuff like be like, I'm moving to Nara, bye suckers. Like setting up a new palace there, which I think is really cool. But she also manages to successfully hand off power to her daughter, Empress Gensho. Sorry, not even daughter, but I think just another woman. So that you get like this kind of like passing of power between women in the imperial line in Japan in the 8th century, 7th century. So, like, this is, it's pretty unheard of, but I think that, kind of the force of will that Genmai has is incredible. So, yeah, I just also want to just take a moment to remember that Japan exists, right?
That is fascinating. I had no idea about that, actually. Never heard about it.
That's
and
great.
Definitely something we should try and keep in mind if we ever get to Japan with the game, you know?
Hey, you know what? There's always time, right?
Yeah.
Who knows?
So I find it really interesting, right? Because you have this growth of the tournament over time from like, here's an all-out melee where your village might get burned down, question mark, to, the really highly stylized kind of jousting and ladies' favors and, days and days of feasting and partying that kind of go around that. But also because one of the things you kind of get, right, when you actually get to the point where there are lots of kind of stylized tournaments is there's lots of tournaments generally, right? So like, there's this possibility from the 14th century onward where you can just be like completely gone from your realm and just go into tournaments, right? Like that's how many that there are. You can just be like, oh, well, when you're done with one, you're off to the next one, right? It's like the tournaments kind of never stop, right?
And I guess it was also like a great way for unlanded knights, to make a name for themselves and to get some money, because that was like the main prize that they were giving out. It was like, oh yeah, have some money or whatever.
Find an employer, if nothing else.
Yeah, also that.
But this is something we represent in the game, because if you start in 867 or 1066, there will be tournaments, but quite a few. Like there will be one now and then. And there will be a few contests. We have quite a few different types from like, archery and wrestling, dueling, melee, all of the ones that you would expect. Later on, you of course get jousting. And then towards the later era, everyone starts hosting them. And I mean, especially the French, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
but there will be enough tournaments for you to go and, as you say, never be home again. Which was represented by a character in one of our Observe games that I took a picture of and shared. I think you've seen him.
Yeah.
It was the account in was it Barcelona or somewhere?
I think it was country.
Called Martin the Shy, who had done nothing but compete in tournaments for his entire life. He was the only one in the world that had maxed out every single tournament-related skill. And he was zealous. So he had also went to all of the Catholic pilgrimage sites twice.
William the Marshal.
Yeah.
Wow.
Literally William the
And
Marshal.
as I was observing him, he went to another tournament.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
and he was wearing this
I
full
love
plate
it.
helmet, so you couldn't see his face, and he was named the Shy. I want to imagine that there were people like this in history as well, that just went to tournaments and pilgrimages. They were never home.
Like Henry the Young King, for example, the son of Henry II, he was all the time there in France, just competing in tournaments with his mates, including William the Marshal. Shout out, I love him. I will not shut up about William the Marshal. So he was just constantly in tournaments there. And meanwhile, Richard the Lionheart was, pacifying the realm and blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, Henry the Young King is just, having fun.
Yeah,
Just the way
just
tournamenting.
This is my hot take. I think we give Richard I too much shit. I think his brothers were actually worse. Like, this is my hot take. I think I'm along in this, but yeah.
What do you think? Is that a hot take?
Yeah, no, I quite like that, and I come down on the side of you are correct here, and I like being contrarian about this stuff because I think people also kind of like give John too much shit. And like everyone was always heaping praise on Richard for question mark, no reason. That man was a cad, as far as I'm concerned. And John, is he a great king? Well, maybe not, but also he inherited a lot of problems. And what did you want him to do? I don't think that he's as like bad as everyone kind of like shakes it out to be. So yes, I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to adopt this as a personality trait because it matches really well with my own heartfelt beliefs. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I just passionately hate Henry the Young King. That's my my thing.
But now you can be Henry the Young King.
Oh my god, yeah, you
game.
can. You can be hateful in the game.
And never be home again.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's interesting too because it's one of these things that I always say where like when I get confused about billionaires acting like idiots online, I'm always like, if I was a billionaire, I would just be at the beach. You wouldn't find your girl online, right? And so it's like very relatable when you see these guys who are just on tournaments and stuff. Like, do I think it's right? Probably not. And like I can see from the way that people write about their absent kings that it doesn't go down particularly well. Would I be tempted to do it if it was me? Yes, absolutely. Am I going to try to be an absolutely terrible trash ruler who just runs around to tournaments the whole time? Yeah. Yes, I'm going to do that immediately. Yeah.
Well, another noble pastime was hunting. And that's what many kings spent all of their days doing.
So much hunting. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, and different kinds of hunting, both, going out into the forest, chasing down a boar, using dogs and spears, and but also falconry, which is that's another thing we've added. You can now host falconry hunts.
Yeah, and falconry I actually love because it was like flirty sometimes. Like, you know, women get to go on falconry like with the other guys, being like, oh yeah, look, I have a hawk, isn't it cute? And they got to go together, like, you know, horse and horse, but it was cute.
And it was the going together thing that was the flirty part, right?
Yeah, it was
it's you get to see this all the time depicted in, there's a series of it's an art motif called the Labors of the Year, where they kind of like show what job typically gets done, but it's often like made by noble people, so it's always like May hawking, right? Like, and then it's an excuse always to show people flirting, and it's very, very popular because you do it in mixed company. Right. So, you know, you get to have your tiny, and the girls they have like goshawks. They have like a little one. They got a little one. You know, like the men have like these very expensive falcons, sometimes brought in from Iceland and places like that. You know, like that's like the big one. If you can get kind of like the white falcons, everyone's like, ooh, wow. But then the girls have like little smaller hawks, and they go out, and really it's just an excuse to like flirt with boys, which is great. And, you know, like nothing but respect for everyone who made that particular one work, but hugely, hugely popular just for the purposes of doing something kind of sexy, right?
Yeah, and rival hunting as well. Like we see a lot of princes, like, you know, being trained in both falconry and just hunting. It was like, again, a mock kind of war thing, like tournaments, but, you know, a smaller scale.
Exactly. Training for war or training both for war and courtly skills, I assume. With falconry, it's a lot about interacting with other nobles and how to behave, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very much seen as kind of like one of, as being on par with, for example, courtly love poetry or composing poetry or composing songs. So you need to know how to behave in front of mixed members of the court and comport yourself in a really dignified and sexy manner, while also killing small animals, right? So it's one where we would not understand it at all whatsoever, but they absolutely love it, right?
Normal Tuesday night. Me and boys killing some squirrel.
You with your goshawk.
Yeah.
I didn't know about the smaller birds for the women. I find that to be so cute.
Some girls don't do that. Some girls go all the way and are really quite serious about hawking. But it is kind of like a known that the girlier girls get smaller hawks.
Oh.
Like it's.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting you. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, not at all. I was going to just say also it's quite interesting because there's also a ranking of birds within this. So it's like falcons are considered to be more noble and more princely because falcons, you hunt with them more in the open ground, and they are seen as being noble because they don't sneak up on their prey. Whereas hawks are usually used more specifically by members of the household, and they are better used in hunting in forests and places like that. So, you know, if you actually need a rabbit for the dinner table, you're going to send a servant out with a hawk, and they're going to go into the forest and they'll get it. But everyone's like, oh, those hawks, they sneak up on animals and they're cowardly. They're not like falcons who are, you know, who are princely and really like do everything out in the open. So there's also this kind of like weird moral weight that people put on different birds, but it's mostly just kind of like to differentiate what nobles are doing from what commoners are doing, I think.
Yeah, an interesting thing for me is like, was it like dangerous to go on a hunt? Like, do we find people dying on hunts?
Oh God, yeah, people do die. People die on hunts, usually from horse accidents, though. To be honest, it's not going to be that the boar got you. Sure, the boar might get you. Like, boars are pretty dangerous for sure, but that is kind of like not what happens most of the time. People get thrown from their horses, and we see this happen all the time in written accounts where people will like find God because a relative died on a hunt suddenly, and they'll be like, oh, my aunt was killed, thrown from her horse, and this has really reminded me that like death is coming for us all, and I've got to like live my life right. And you know, you'll see this kind of like these stories put in various like devotional books, so like books of hours, things like that. But also there are some high profile cases. So very famously, Holy Roman Emperor Louis the Bavarian, or Ludwig the Bavarian, died on a bear hunt, although he had a stroke, we think. You know, he was having too much fun.
Was the story maybe embellished so he was killed by the bear? I don't know.
Yeah, right. Like I would like it if he was killed by the bear, but I think he just had a stroke. It's, and that's quite fun. It's quite an interesting one, right? Because he was actually gearing up for war at the time. He was about to kind of like because he'd been excommunicated, the Pope didn't like him. They were like, we gotta get ourselves a new Holy Roman Emperor in here, which is Charles IV. But they were like, okay, we're about to go do battle, and he's like, hold the phone on that, everyone. Bear hunt, just one moment, right? And so you can see this thing about like royal people at the time. You could be embroiled in like the highest level of warfare. You can have made an anti-pope because you were beefing with the regular pope, and you could be like about to put it all on the line, and there's still time for a bear hunt, right? There's still time for a bear hunt, and like that's how much they love it. They just absolutely love hunting.
Yeah, we also see this in literature, like I think especially about Arthurian romance, where all the Arthurian romance starts either with a hand or a fist, like they were like equivalent. They were like, oh, it's big party, right? Like they just loved it. They made no distinction. They were like, oh yeah, big party, hand, I don't mind. Yeah.
And I mean, I think we show this in the game because we have different types of hunts as well. You can do it for leisure, or you can go on more dangerous hunts, falconry we talked about, or looking for your own white whale if you've spotted some sort of white animal,
Yeah, I think we have a whole event chain of you becoming like obsessed with this legendary animal. You become like King Pellinor. You're like, oh, I need to find the white hart. I need to find the white hart. And you just go crazy and crazier.
Yeah. But it's also on every like normal hunt, you get to decide, do I just want to hunt rabbits? Or like go for a fox, or is it a bear hunt? Has a bear been spotted here? Let's go for the bear and maybe die if we're unlucky, but also get a lot of prestige if we succeed.
Absolutely. It is one of these things where people are also really immersed in the realities of what this means, right? So hunting it's a dangerous sport. There are all of these things that could go wrong, whether it's being thrown from your horse or mauled by a bear, or you can be gored by a bull. There are all these little things that kind of can go wrong there. And in fact, it is kind of like one of the traditional ways that people maybe murder their rivals. Where we'll see people who kind of like get taken out. It's like, oh, and he's dead
mysteriously.
His horse was spooked and he was thrown. Oh well, it is kind of a way where you're also taking your life into your own hands a little bit, just because who's surrounding you, right?
Yeah. So a common thing between all the activities we've made, literally all of them, I believe, are 3 intents. We were talking about intents before. One is flirt. Of course, you can always find some time for flirting. One is being friendly with people. Usually you invite someone because you want to be on their good side. Or murder. Yeah. A tragic hunting accident. It's so sad that it happened this particular time, that the horse happened to stumble and throw him off the cliff. It's tragic.
Who could have foreseen, but yeah, it's true, because there's all these different things that could happen, right? Like maybe you get a cool story out of it. Maybe you kiss a girl. Maybe you get murdered. Why not, right?
Classic.
Maybe all at once.
Yeah. Well, it's not
if you're lucky.
Yeah, it's not. It's not impossible for everyone to have, or for your party to have every single possible intent targeting you. So you will get flirted with, befriended, and thrown off a cliff. Or at least an attempt was made.
You get thrown from your horse coming back with the bear because you were flirting too hard with the girl. Like that's the way to do it, I think. Exactly. Go down like a champ.
Yeah, we have like an event that I found incredibly funny, that if you murder like your spouse during your wedding, you get this pop-up event saying, how tragic, no one could have seen this coming, I'm so sad, I'm gonna cry a lot. It's like the most cynical event ever. It's like, well, bad luck.
Who could have seen this coming?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's something you can use feasts and weddings for if you're incredibly cynical, as you say.
Yeah. You need to be you need to have like cages, like sadistic stuff, and just start murdering around.
I mean, it did happen in history that, a feast happened and it was just a front for murdering an entire rival family. It's like, oh, this is our let's be friends again feast. After this one, we will be friends for the rest of our lives.
That are going to be very short, quick.
However long that is.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I
I mean,
feel
yeah,
like
it's also a way of kind of like, even if you don't go fully killing people, it's also a way, certainly, of kind of like exacting power over them. You know, being able to, if you can kind of like say you have to come to this and kind of like getting a hook on people, then they have to come along and it's like, "Ugh, what do I owe you now?" Right? Like it could just be a party, or it could be like now suddenly they have to give you a loan, something like that, right?
We have a system in the game where if you make someone the guest of honor of a feast, they are compelled to come because they are being honored. They will get a lot of reward for it. And it's pretty much the only way of making someone who hates you come. And then you can, maybe murder them.
But
Yeah,
the
why
toast,
not? Yeah.
But the moment of the toast is so funny to me because you get the option of, are you gonna honor your guest of honor? And you're like, oh yeah, obviously. And then you have an option of, I'm gonna honor myself. And you just click that, and everyone is like confused, but you get to steal a lot of the stage because everyone's like, oh yeah, I guess he's cool. Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love it.
Yeah,
I think that it's so fun kind of being able to play with the various kind of like ideas of honor and how like they are used in these cynical methods, historically. And so it's nice being able to actually do that. I think some people kind of think that history is really flat and what you see is what you get. And it's like, no, everyone's scheming the whole time. So it's nice to be able to really like get down on that.
Yeah, I think the biggest example of this that we're representing in the game are grand weddings. Because you might see the name, it's like, oh, this is going to be a wedding. It's everything but a wedding. The wedding is the least important part of the wedding.
Yeah.
It's all the scheming and
Alliances,
politicking going on around it. You can impress people, form alliances, get new vassals, get hooks and favors. And that's pretty much all it is.
It's just a diplomacy incident.
Yeah. It's like a crazy amount of diplomacy and intrigue happening at once. Everyone against everyone.
Yeah. Many events of your awkward family dinner, like in Thanksgiving. And there are events of your, like, there is an event where someone from your family that hates their spouse comes to you and like, you're going to be miserable. You're going to hate this. Be married this one. It has kind of that awkward, like, dinner vibe. Like, it's so fun.
It's amazing. There's so many fun things that can happen during grand weddings.
You can push someone off a well if they're too drunk. You can be like, oops.
And there's obviously two perspectives. You can be marrying, or you're just marrying one of your children to someone, and your objective might be to do diplomacy or just mischief, or do a bloody wedding.
Yeah, also that. You can just murder everyone. Well, everyone from
my
your
objective
family.
is always to do mischief, pretty much. Like I'm always just doing. I'm always up to no good. I think that's kind of like my major thing on like with any of my dynasties. I'm just trying to do the worst possible thing most of the time.
We have an actual intent for that. If you attend a feast or a wedding as a guest, you can choose mischief, and it's basically just a stress relieving intent, but it has like some special events. So for example, if you have the mischief intent, you can just do the whole pushing down a well like people. You can be like, oops, you died. I'm very mischievous.
Mess around with the food.
Yeah, you can mess around the food. There is an event called, it's all a jest. That's just you like joking with someone, be like, pulling a prank on them. It's like, it's all but a jest, my lord. But yeah.
I cannot wait to wreak havoc with that. That is going to be absolutely fantastic.
Isn't there some really cool historical examples of
mischief?
Mischief, but also bloody weddings, or I know you dug some up. I know this for sure.
My favorite one, obviously, Leoness, because shout out to Viria every time. So we have the whole Garcia de Castilla and his wife, his betrothed, Sancha of Leon. And he was like on his way to visit her, to be like, we're gonna get married. So I wanna see what the deal is. And he goes to Leon, and the moment he gets there, everyone, like the whole enemy family of the Bella that hated him and were allied with we don't know for sure, but we suspect they were allied with the dad of the wife. He just gets there and they just kill him. His whole entourage is like, no wedding for you, bye. And I love that one.
I just think that it's so interesting kind of like watching these things come together from the perspective of like in the future where it's so incomprehensible to us, now that weddings have like a really kind of like different meaning. It's so interesting kind of like seeing when you can kind of like go and see examples such as that, where you're like, how do you get away with this? And the answer is like, well, it's just so bold. It's so brazen that like, what is anyone going to really do?
That's how we represent it, actually. When you do something like this, it is so bold and so brazen that you do get away with it.
Yeah.
Or, well, you get incredible penalties, of course.
The Pope hates you. The Pope is like, what did you do? He's communicating immediately. He's like, no, I don't want to hear about it. Go back. Like,
this is so unholy. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. The Pope is like, what are you doing?
And I love that too, because I think that it's so useful to be able to show. One of the things that I love about the game is that it's so useful to show that like the Pope can really hate you, and that doesn't necessarily mean that anything about you stops, right? Like you could be like, what are you gonna do? Oh, you excommunicated me? Oh, am I excommunicated? Is that what it is? Like, because some people just really, really don't care. Some people do. Very much. Some people are out here walking to Camosa. Others are like, I'm going on a bear hunt. Like it just doesn't matter to some people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and another cool thing that happened at tournaments was not a tournament per se, but it was like the whole passed arms thing, where like, a knight could be like, okay, this is my bridge now, and everyone that wants to cross this bridge, I'm gonna stop. And we see a very famous one, again, in Leon, because a girl cannot shut up. And we see Suero de Quiñones in the 15th century. He's with 10 of his mates. He goes to the bridge, and he's like, everyone that tries to cross this bridge, I'm gonna, duel. And that's it, because he was on the way to Santiago de Compostela, so he had like very high traffic. And he was like, until I break 300 lances, I'm not gonna move. And he just stays there for months. He's like, come. And he just stabs people. Yes, immediately. It's so funny to me that this guy was like, this is my bridge now, what are you gonna do about it? Yeah.
I absolutely love this, right? Because it's such a good way of just causing problems, right? It's I think that a lot of the time when we think about people kind of like taking a hold of bridges, we're thinking about tolls, or we're thinking about, this is a way of kind of like raising money. It's like sometimes it can be a bit of a, like sometimes it's just because I don't know. I thought it would be kind of funny to do this, and you're like, oh, all right, and it establishes a name for you. Is your name that you're like, oh, you're that dick who wouldn't let anyone cross the bridge. Okay, but it's a way of kind of like getting recognition. It's like the equivalent of trolling in the medieval period, and it's open to members of the nobility. This is something you can do, because literally, who's going to stop you? Another guy with a lance? Great, that's what I asked for, right?
Yeah, we made this into the game because obviously this was too cool to just not add. And a knight in a tournament can be like, okay, this is my bridge now. And there is a whole event chain about that knight being like, no, you need to let me have this bridge. And then you can be like, no, be gone. And everyone kind of hates you because it was like, that was so cool. You should have let him have the bridge.
I remember early on, this is one of the first event chains that we made for tournaments. That one of the knights really made a name for themselves. I think they were like a giant with 56 marshals.
He was everywhere.
Prowess.
He was everywhere.
But didn't he also kill most of the contestants?
Yeah, but the whole thing at the beginning, for some reason, like we set up like something wrong, and the same character would show up constantly to the same thing. So this guy was doing the passed arms. Then he was tavern brawling. Then he was like coming to you, being like, "Oh, have this gift. I just bought it from the blacksmith." And then he was just everywhere. He was doing everything.
And this recurring character themes, it's fantastic for storytelling. I think he also did kill half the contestants.
He killed everyone because he was too strong. Like, he was unstoppable. It was this guy be like, "You're gonna cross my bridge?" And then everyone was like, "I guess not." It's really cool stuff.
I'm so excited for that. This is probably the worst expansion that's ever been brought out for me personally, because I'm never getting anything reasonable done. It's just going to be nothing but bridges and like shoving someone in a well at a wedding. Like why didn't you guys think about me, the person who's easily distracted, before you brought this out?
Well, I'm sorry. But it's also fun when people play this expansion and they want to, for example, be the master of the arena. But the character that they have is so unsuited that they come as like, why can I not win a single contest? Well, it's because you're absolutely at this.
Yeah, you're gonna have to play chess, mate. Like, that's your thing now. You're the master of the chess.
And then someone else is like, it's so easy. I'm like, yes, you're playing a giant with 30 prowess. Of course it's gonna be easy.
Yeah.
But I think...
Yeah.
This happened to me in the Iberia expansion because I really wanted to be good at chess, and all my guys were just really bad at it, and I kept like taking on opponents over and over and losing. It's just like I could not get a single guy who was good at chess. I don't know. It was just something about me.
Yeah, and the cool thing about tournaments as well is that they were like this like traveling circus kind of thing, because like it wasn't only the knights, right? It was the knights and the squires and the page and the blacksmiths and the merchants and everyone traveling with them. So they could arrive there and be like, oh, this is now a small village, you know?
And think too about, you have camp followers in the same way that you do with armies. So it's like there's people who are selling food, there's people who are selling sex, there's people who are selling, badges, and there's people who are selling jewelry. So you have this whole kind of like bazaar essentially that springs up everywhere that you go, and it's also met by people in the town doing the same thing. So it's like, it's like going to the fair or something. It's very, very exciting.
We also see a lot of like plays and theater. Like people love that, both in tours, tournaments, fairs. We see it everywhere. We see, religious things, but then that evolve into, well, one of my favorite things is when guilds get into theater and they're like, oh, we're gonna, make a theme. And they're like, okay, so we're the goldsmiths, so we're gonna bring gold for the nativity scene because that's our thing, and then the fishmongers are like, oh, have fish for the scene with, the bread and the fish. And then they absolutely love like special effects. So they had in one of these plays, they had just a guy like, churning cold into the mouth of hell to showcase that there was a mouth of hell with fire. And he's just constantly there, just churning cold, being like, yeah, this is the mouth of hell.
I love it. Yeah, mystery plays, right? They're just so cool. And I love how into mystery plays everybody gets. And I like that they had to be banned, like priests had to be banned from participating at a point in time, because it used to be that priests were doing it. And they're like, yeah, like quick, let's suspend me from the roof of the church like an angel and all stuff. And the Pope had to be like, you are not an actor. Get down from there, and they were so heartbroken because they loved it so much. And then the guilds take over and it gets actually even like more wild. But I like how much, mystery plays kind of really, they just get people going. Everybody loves them, man.
Yeah, we have a couple of play events as well, like especially when you go on a tour, because the people, the lord of the village is like, oh, okay, we need to set something up, mystery play, there you go. And then you get very funny events of, you see the priest, hanging out from like the ceiling, as you say, and stuff like that, and it's just real cool.
Yeah, there's a few things you can do when you're on a tour, and one of them is a cultural festival.
Yeah.
I assume that we have I think you made a lot of the cultural festival content.
Yeah, I made a bunch. And there is one about the guild. You see the guild that doing, some preparations for the festival. And then someone in your entourage goes, oh, that's so cool. Can I stay? And you're like, oh, I don't know. Like, maybe. But yeah. There are a lot of plays. Yeah, there is also one where an artist gets injured because they're doing some acrobatic stuff, and then you're like, well, it sucks to be you, and then everyone just kind of goes, what? Yeah.
And then you can either be, show's not very good, is it? Or you can be altruistic.
Yeah, you can fall asleep during a show. There's a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah, especially during tours, you have a lot of ways of approaching the tour itself. One of them, I think you were onto this earlier, is Lechery, where you can try to literally just leave a string of bastards along the path you have plotted.
Amazing, yes.
Yeah. So you just it's basically like a pub crawl, but brothel crawl. We call it internally for a bit as a joke. It's just a brothel crawl. So you just go there and you're like, oh, this one, oh, this one. Oh.
Yeah, or you can be altruistic and hand out gold to everyone.
Yeah.
Or the royal touch. Oh, sorry.
The brothel crawl, like that's a big thing too, and or like using brothels when you have tournaments or festivals. That's like a big thing where, like, famously, if the Holy Roman Emperor sometime would show up in various cities, he'd be like, "And I'm paying for all the brothels," and everyone's like, "Hooray!" And then you could like run off to the brothel, like, and then go see a play, right? This is like a valid way of celebrating.
Yeah, a lot of fun stuff can happen, like if you go on a tour, I think.
That's amazing. I do like the altruistic thing where you do the royal touch, which is something I didn't know about before.
Ooh,
yeah, you're like, have a coin.
Exactly, it's been blessed by me.
Yeah. That's really cool. But my favorite thing is like when you go also on a pilgrimage, you can ask like the bishop there to bless your stuff. So you can be like, oh, bless my my sword or whatever. But sometimes because it grabs a random artifact, sometimes it will grab absolutely insane stuff. So it's like, oh, can you bless my orgy tapestry, Pope, please?
Yeah, because I would love that. Yeah, I want the whole body tapestry. Come on.
Yeah,
yes.
and it's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll bless your tapestry.
I have had them bless my pilgrim's guide a few times, which I find very funny.
That's so cool.
It's not only a travel guide, I also got it blessed.
Yeah, it's
like the ultimate souvenir.
Yeah. But yeah, cool stuff.
That's absolutely adorable. I love that. I want a blessed travel guide now. Man, I'm serious. I'm going to lose so many hours to just sticking around at this. Like,
it's just like, I just think that sometimes it's just fun to, to let loose and to roleplay like as a king. Like medieval kings, what do? They go on pilgrimages, they go tours, they go, to tournaments. It's like all this party ambient.
Yeah, there's so much stuff you can do now,
Yeah.
except for war. You can keep yourself busy forever, and some rulers really do, like that one I mentioned, Martin the Shy, but also others. I've seen. It depends on their personality. The less social a ruler is, the less likely they are to join in. But if they are extremely extroverted, I've seen Holy Roman emperors do literally nothing but join feasts and hunts. In the
sounds like Holy Roman emperors.
Sounds like that. And I think that is very interesting because now you have something to do during peace times, which was like, one of our biggest concerns. It was like, oh, you're warfaring or you're doing nothing. And now you have like a lot of stuff to do.
Yep.
Which is cool.
And there's something for each, no matter what you're aiming for. Pilgrimages take so long now, but the reward at the end is enormous. And there's a lot of content, both travel content and pilgrimage. Like I mentioned, but you stay and you reflect, or you decide, I'm going to stay here for 2 months in the city because it's a cool city. And I'm in no hurry anyway.
When you visit Rome, you sometimes get a pop-up about, like Roman monuments and stuff, and you're like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I think it's Rome and Baghdad and Constantinople.
Those three.
There's also hunts, which generate a lot of new, little trinkets and mementos, and foxtails and new skulls. You can hunt all manner of animals, hyenas, lions, and stuff. Feasts, of course, where you can do a lot of mischief or diplomacy. Inviting honorary guests, I do like that. I do like inviting my rivals, not necessarily to murder them, but to try and reconcile.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I find it to be sweet somehow. Come to my party, and then I try to befriend you.
Yeah, I get reasonably bent out of shape when people don't like me in the game. And then it'll be like, yeah, but you said that you're like a pagan who's refusing to like convert to Christianity. That's why. And I'm like, well, that's no reason. And I get too angry. Yeah.
And then tours, of course. Going on taxation tour.
So fun.
Yeah, again, I want to mention the funny taxes that people made up. To the point where I made like a custom list of just words. And it's just stuff you make up as a tax. Like, oh, there's a sword tax in this city.
The stool tax, the table tax.
Yeah, the table tax, the chicken tax. It's nonsense. And it's in quotation marks when you get it.
Oh, I love that. Oh,
so you're just there chilling, welcoming the king. And he's like, this is the chicken tax. And you're like,
excuse me, what?
The chickens. We're in Siberia, man. But yeah.
Do they have to be live or dead? That's how many chickens I'm eating or how many chickens I'm feeding.
Whatever is
yes,
more.
Right?
And tournaments, of course. I really enjoy going to tournaments and also seeing what tournament. It's all personality and culture based, right? So in the steppe, for example, you will see a lot of people wrestling, like wrestling tournaments all over the place. Wrestling and horse racing, that's what they like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean that's a valid form of like tourism and a valid form of tournament, right? Where it's like wrestling still kind of gets a little bit more involved sometimes in like the southern Mediterranean, although like not as often. But I love that. I'm such a sucker for the steppe people. I gotta say, they've got the best hats, and they're wrestling. Like, come on, what's not to like?
Exactly. I think it was part of the, what did they call it? The manly arts. There was like 3 manly arts or something. I'm trying to remember this now. Something I read about a long, long time ago. Back in the CK2 days, actually. I was reading about the steps and the various contests they had. They were preparing for war all the time. So it really suits them to host these kinds of tournaments where, they hone their martial skills so that they can go and conquer the settled peoples.
Ooh, on the steps, can you hunt with golden eagles?
Oh, I wish. They really had some impressive eagles over there, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, it's from Mongolia that the
Arabs like up in that
to
region.
buy eagles, from the steppe. The coolest.
Sorry, I'm like, here's just something that I thought about at the top of my head. Put that in a game.
Yeah, maybe
I'm the worst. Yeah.
When we get to the steps, we can do special types of,
Special birds.
Yeah, special birds.
Yeah.
I mean, like these enormous lammergeier birds, these big that eat bone.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's like, you're out there with like an eagle hunting goats. That's good stuff.
Yeah, that's
good.
crazy.
Hunting your enemies. That would be something.
Yeah.
You could, yeah. You really could.
I'm a big fan of recitals though, because I'm an Occitania girl, so I love the Jeux Florals and the flower games that they had there, where it was like basically just a rap battle, and I was like, oh, you suck, oh no, you suck more, and then there were men, and they were obviously, the more serious ones being like, oh, I made this poem about the trees and stuff like that and the brevity of life. But then the prizes they gave out were so cool. They got to give, a rose in made of silver or stuff like that, and that's so cool, so pretty.
Oh, why don't we have that? We have a lot of prizes you can earn from tournaments.
I know it was requested. I don't know if we got to it.
One of the coolest prizes you can earn from a tournament is an enormous barrel of wine. Like
the
giant barrel of wine is like, here's your prize. Good luck getting this home.
Oh, I love that. That is a very good prize because it forces people to then share it. That's nice.
Yeah.
Exactly. But otherwise, you earn a lot of jewelry and weapons and armor, of course.
Yeah.
And
of course,
you can do
a lot of money.
You can do a knight's tale and just chop it up for money if you want.
Yeah.
I don't need
this.
All right. Give me the cash.
Yeah.
That's what I like. I'm gonna, immediately try to do. I try to knight's tale everything, so that's fine. That's fine with me. Very good stuff.
I do believe that the accolades give quite a bit of flavor to this because you can bring, of course, bringing your knights along to a tournament is a big thing because you want them to be ready for war.
Yeah.
And if you've made an accolade, that means that they can also grow in legend, and you do that easiest by bringing them to tournaments, and it can be, the truest of the Spanish knights or something can be the name.
And then they get glory points because it's like, but he's the truest of the Spanish knights.
Yeah, and they carry on a little legacy. Like, maybe this isn't the original truest of the Spanish knights, but this guy, he carries the legacy of the previous one. He was the apprentice.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
And then you have to send him to tournaments for him to train.
Yeah. You're like, he's the truest of the Spanish knights. It just keeps, going, final Spanish knight.
And it's all about, flashiness and how cool you can be.
Yeah, pageantry, very much the thing. I definitely want to do a nerd tournament now, too. That's the thing.
The nerd tournament is fantastic.
The nerd tournament is amazing.
People showing up is like, yes, finally, my time to shine.
And the chess tournament, women can get into it, and then it's kind of flirty. It's kind of,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's like, we're playing chess. Like, I'm the queen. It's really cool.
Oh, no, you captured my queen.
Yeah. Well.
No, but there's in the later game, there's an insane amount of activities going on all the time. It's fantastic.
Yeah, which I guess makes sense,
that.
right? Like, you get to the late Middle Ages, everyone loves a good party. It's like,
People are competing, like, go to my tournament. No, my tournament is better.
I love that because it's such an accurate representation of what's going on and like why people are doing tournaments, right? It's just like there's money, there's prestige, there's all kinds of options for you. If this is all you want to do with your life, do that, right?
Exactly. You can get a lot of renown for your name or for your dynasty by especially hosting these like epic activities. I mean, they can also really go to shit if you're unlucky, right? As I mentioned, if you host a tournament and you spend nothing on the lodgings, nothing on the prices, firstly, no one will come, and those who come will be like rowdy ruffians, more likely to burn down the place than to actually compete properly.
That are the street
You're never going to
fights,
get you'll never get high flyers if you're not putting them up nicely, you know? Not a chance.
It's also like tournaments. It's also like a cool way to visit, places that you couldn't go otherwise, because we have, this really cool locale scene that we call, which is like, the 2D map of the village. And you can click, the Legends, and you can click on the village and you can visit it. And then you find, a Latin inscription there that you didn't know was there. And you're like, oh, what's that? Oh, there used to be like a Roman road here. Oh, that's so cool. And then you just bring the rock home with you. You're like, oh, this is my rock now.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there's something that does interest me that I've been thinking of is one of the problems we had in the game that must have been a problem in real life is that like there's no such thing as looking up Google Maps, seeing how long it will take to get somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
If you have a tournament and it's going to start at a certain point, there's going to have to be quite a long buffer period because people are going to travel there from all over the place. And when are they going to arrive? Well, they can't exactly phone you and say, hey, I'm arriving in 3 days. So,
So it's like there are two kind of things that happen there, where it's the amount of time you need to give people to travel, and also the amount of money you need to kind of then put up in order to put them up. Because if they are there early, that's your responsibility. When are they leaving?
Who knows?
Question mark. Because they might not leave right after the tournament. So there are these kind of like the ways that things can kind of blow out either side in order to accommodate the fact that people are coming from all over, because they really, really are, right?
Yeah, they are. This is also very noticeable in something like a feast, where sometimes if you invite a guest of honor, they get stuck somewhere, and you're waiting there with the rest of the guests. It's like, oh, well, I guess we're... you're just going to have to stay here and be entertained while we wait for...
this is the practice feast now.
Yeah, this is the practice feast. Where are they?
You're like, talk to my spouse.
And travel can be really dangerous. Sometimes people just drown in a swamp on the way. Like, oh, well, too bad.
We have bandit attacks. We have everything.
If you stray from the path, or there's bandits, or you got to go through Switzerland and the barons are going to rob you. Like there's all kinds of different things that can kind of come up to delay you. Like what if there's a big flood? It's not. This is something that impacts us now. It's much, much worse in the medieval period.
Yeah, one of the most dangerous terrains you can travel through is the ocean.
Oh, yes.
By far the most dangerous one, which is why, at least as a player, it's sometimes prudent to take the long way around if you're going to Jerusalem. You can walk through, Byzantium if you want to. It's definitely safer. It's not faster, but you can avoid the coasts or the oceans.
Yeah, and we have a lot of, of historical examples of people just dying on a ship. Like, the tragedy of the White Ship, the most famous one probably. People were just partying and drunk and, no one noticed there was a rock and boom, there goes the heir of England,
It can definitely happen. It's incredibly rare, but sometimes your ship just sinks and everyone dies. And it's a fantastic, dramatic moment for you to experience if you are the regent of a kingdom, for example. The king just drowned,
When I was testing this feature, I could get that event all the time. Like, all my ship would sink immediately. There is no chance for living after that. And I was constantly just dying. And I talked to Alex. I was like, why am I dying? He was like, oh, but that event, has such a low percentage chance of happening. And every time, for some reason, every time I travel, I could die, immediately sink.
It was like the worst case of confirmation bias, because we even dove into the rest of the events to see if something was wrong.
Yeah.
And no, it was just you constantly getting this 0.7% chance of drowning.
Constantly. I was at sea, just chilling. I was like, well, your ship, just sank. So I was like, oh, okay. And then, boom, game over. I was like, what the fuck?
It was also great.
A very common thing when we are testing pilgrimages especially, but all kinds of travel, is that we just click go there.
Yeah.
Without doing any preparations, because preparations for travel, that's a big thing. You know, you're going far. You're not going without a guide, you're not going without food, you're not going without preparations. Like, are you going across mountains? Well, better get a mountaineer to guide you through them, right? A local, ideally. And when we don't do that, we die constantly.
Yeah. So I mean, also just like, who are you bringing with? You got to give them ample time. You know, then they've got to come meet you. You know, like there's all these kind of, especially if you're bringing the boys, right? Like if this is boys' trip, then they've all got to come and like get their stuff too. You know, right?
All of your knights join you. It's excellent to travel with a large group of pilgrims. If you're going on a pilgrimage, you can spend a lot of money to go with a massive group. Because then you always have someone to sacrifice along the way, if it comes to that.
Yeah. There is also like traveling through warfare areas is more dangerous, obviously. And sometimes like there could be like a guy there being like, so you're with the enemies. And you're like, no. And he's like, I heard you were. I heard you were. If you don't pay, you must be with our enemies. And then you have to pay them. Be like,
or you're imprisoned.
Yeah, you're imprisoned. Or they imprison someone. They're like, that guy that's traveling with you, he looks a lot like, the king that, wanted to mess with us. And you're like, no, this is just a random guy. And they're like, no, I think it's the king. And they just try to, just to convince you to pay them or, to imprison you. It's really cool.
I love that because it really is an accurate representation of how weird stuff can get very quickly,
It's also a fantastic way for stories to emerge because you meet so many people along the way that you sometimes pick up and they just join you. And then you go to Jerusalem and you go back and now you have all of these people with a story you care about. Like this is the noble you saved from a lion, or this is the Levantine girl you found that actually speaks German for some reason and joined you. Then you have all of these cool people that you can then assign to. Or
the hermit.
The hermit.
Yeah, I was thinking of the hermit. So we added cave hermits with this thing that very late medieval that some kings could just have a hermit lying around and be like, this is our hermit. He's very into that, and you can just you can encounter him and then you can grab him and be like, come with us, you're so wise, come with us. And then when you're traveling throughout someone's domain, they're like, hey, that's my hermit, that was actually my cave. What are you doing with him? And then you can be like, but he loves me more, and then maybe he stays with you. It's so fun.
It's incredibly fun because it's a real thing as well. Just having a hermit that lives in your garden.
Like your private hermit that you have out back, to be like, isn't it cool?
It's like, this is a very holy, local guy. He's a hermit. He just lives there. And then you just grab him, just steal someone's hermit. It's very fun.
And you even made it so that if you grab them and bring them home, you open up a court position.
Yes.
Garden hermit. Which they are then employed in.
It unlocks that thing. Yeah, it's really cool. Then they have I think it's 15 years or maybe lifetime, I don't remember, discount to being your court hermit because you're like, I saved you from the other courts, now you're mine. And
then when they die, you have a taste for court hermits, so now you can invite more. Try to get more.
It's really fun stuff.
Yeah, generally we try to model a lot of the travel events you get after the culture you're traveling through. There's a lot of things where, this is a chivalrous culture, or this is a culture where they are this or that, xenophilic, for example. They welcome you with open arms, and it's weird. And you can, experience the culture, or be like, this is something maybe we should try to do when we come home. If you're the culture head, and then you get a discount to adopting new traditions by experiencing them firsthand. And that's another thing that kings always did, right? They went somewhere, or not only kings, but like Crusaders and everyone else. They go somewhere, they realize this is cool, and then they bring something home, be it an idea or a type of food.
The whole thing about, Crusader castles, they go to Jerusalem, they say, that castle is cool. We should do that in our castles, and they just bring back a lot of innovations.
Yeah, architects move around with kings. If they go someplace and they find out who built that church they like, they're like, hey, you're coming with me. All sorts of things. Yeah.
I love that. I love bringing things back from my travel. It makes me feel connected to the world in the game. And then, as we were talking about before, because medieval people did travel, they might not have traveled very often or very far necessarily. So when you do this, it feels so impactful.
Yeah, and also there is like this cool thing of the farther you travel, the farther people were unaware of what was going on there, and there were all these sort of stories about the grotesque people.
Yes.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, there is dog-headed people in India. It's obvious. And then if you we added events for this obviously because it's so cool. So depending on where you travel, if you're traveling too far, someone can be like, be careful because there is like the blamia there. Like people have the hats in their chest. Yeah. So
isn't there an entire dynamic setup of things?
There is a dynamic setup where it weights what according to medieval manuscripts what was there, and gives you a random one, and it's so fun because this is inspired by I forgot his name. Gwillian something. He went on an embassy to the Mongolian court, and on the way there he was like, I heard that it was dot-headed people there, the Cynocephaly. I'm so excited. And when he got there, he writes back saying, I'm so sad. There is no dog-headed people here.
We don't have any dog heads. There's not a single skiapod in sight. No one.
Yeah.
I think the interesting. I've heard at least a hypothesis of where the dog-headed people thing comes from. And it might be, Madagascar. The animals that are there. You have the monkeys with the dog heads, right?
Oh.
And that there might have been trades, and maybe they saw them in Ethiopia because they traded. What are the names of them again? I can't remember. I should know this because I'm a nature freak.
Some form of lemur, yeah.
And that might be where it came from, because they sort of look like people with dog heads.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm constantly sad that we don't have dog-headed people too, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to make my peace with it. What can I say?
Yeah.
Well, you can choose to buy into this and just delay the entire travel by 2 weeks. No, I'm going to find them.
Yeah, there is an option if you're arrogant or very obsessed with the stuff. That's no. We're going to find them. And your court chaplain is like, no, but they don't exist. And you're like, no, we're going to find them. It's so fun.
I love it.
Yeah.
It is really fun. There's a lot of historical flavor in the travel events, from hermits to dog-headed people, but there's way, way, way more.
Yeah, there is a lot.
I think that people, we tend to focus on tournaments because they're big and flashy and fun, and we all like jousting, but there's all these cool ways to waste time and have fun in the medieval period, and I'm so glad that we're going to get a game that actually reflects that now.
Yes.
Yeah, my favorite one might be going on pilgrimage. I just love going on pilgrimage. It's so chill. You just go there, and a lot of weird stuff happens to you, and you're like, Rome.
Yeah,
why not?
Yeah.
It is really fun to go on a hash as well, because there's some real Mansa Musa options. We talked about Mansa Musa earlier, right? And there's some options that allow you to really be him when you're there, on site. And you're like, what should you sacrifice? And you can go the top options, 3,000 gold. It's 72 camels. Just sacrifice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's insane. I don't think the AI really does this, but you can if you want to.
If you want to, you can do it. Why not?
Yeah. There is a lot of weird options, only unlock if you have certain trains, the whole, as we were talking about, the whole dot-headed people. It's if you have this trade, you become obsessed. Yeah. It's cool.
I'm going to attempt to hunt a unicorn or something like that, thereby bringing the hunting and weird obsession together.
It's possible. If you're a lunatic, you can hunt for unicorns or dragons.
Nice.
I'm not exactly sure what you actually bring home, but I have looked into the script, and there are trophies you can get. What exactly they are? That's
I think we have a narwhal task in the game.
Yeah, narwhal. I bet. Maybe a crocodile, something like that.
Yeah.
That was a very common thing when people had a unicorn horn. It was almost always.
Yeah, it was a narwhal.
It was narwhal.
Narwhal horn.
Yeah, but my favorite bit of that is that commoners, they also wanted, unicorn stuff because it had, these healing properties. So obviously they couldn't afford the narwhal task. So people in the, in the villages could sell unicorn powder. And it was like this. It was just, it was just a style or whatever.
Just powder.
Yeah, just powder. And they were like, oh yeah, this is unicorn powder. And people were like, oh, now I'll heal from all poisons. Yeah.
There is a lot of events about you trying to find, healing waters and such on the way.
Yeah. You find a knight errant searching for the fountain of eternal youth. And he's like, hey, there is this monster that's, blocking the way. If you help me, I'll give you a bit of the water. And then you get there and it's just a boar. And you're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And there is an option to, obviously to help him. And there is an option that while he's fighting the boar, you just grab the water and leave.
Yeah.
And then just get off. Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then you can get an artifact there, right? Which is like, oh, this is the water of life. And the description says like, oh, this will prevent injury and disease. And then you look at the effects and it's like, no, it does not do that. It lowers stress a little bit because you think you're safe.
Yeah. Okay, lowering stress though, that is good. That makes sense. Placebos, they always exist.
Yeah, totally. And then you can, obviously, if you help the knight, you can bring him back. And it's like this cool knight errant that, you just found the fountain of youth and you have him there.
Exactly. You bring him back. You bestow upon him an accolade. You take him to tournaments. You build his legend.
Yeah.
This is all we're trying to do. This is.
We're trying to make it all connected. You find someone on your travel, then you go on tournament, then you make them your guest of honor, blah, blah, blah.
One of the funniest tour events is also one based on history, if I'm not mistaken, where you're woken up in the middle of the night by your host, sitting in your bed.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I know the perfect gift. My company. And then he either wants to talk to you, or if you're compatible, sexually, then something else can happen.
Oh my God.
But normally it's just them waking you up and it's like, hey, I know my company is the best gift. Let's talk.
You're welcome, what? Baby.
That event, and again, has another cool anecdote because for a while, the guy would go to your room completely naked. So even if he just wanted to be your friend, talk about, I don't know, castles, he was there sitting naked on your bed and you were like, what's Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot of very, very funny bugs throughout development. One of them, definitely that one, because it was just checking. It wasn't checking if you were actually compatible. It just take off his clothes.
He was just naked, always.
Yeah.
You know what? You're calling it a bug. I'm calling it a feature.
Exactly.
That's fine. Yeah.
All right.
Super fun. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.